Okay, so from a point of view of sea change in your workplace and who we are, what do we do? So first of all, who we are. So Shine is an organisation who supports people affected by mental ill health, and Sea Change is a project at Shine. So to tell you a little bit about Shine first, Shine is around since the 70s, and so with more than 40 years experience, we are supporting people affected by mental ill health, and that means people who struggle with their own mental health and need support. And we would look after people with more complex mental health needs. So things like schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, severe depression. But we would also look after people who have depression, anxiety disorder, and a range of other mental health issues. We also have family and carers groups as well. So we would look after the people who live with and support people who are affected by a mental illness. So there's an awful lot of information that you can find out on shine.ie. We have 3 centres, one in Dublin, one in Waterford, and one in Cork, and we have resource officers around the country. So we do have a lot of information there about the service we provide, and we also focus on a recovery-based model. So this idea that people can and do recover, and we empower people to have their own voices heard and to start that recovery journey. So that's shine.ie. So essentially on Shine's journey, they were looking about 30 years in about the barriers to the supports and how people were accessing or not the services. And one of the things they found was that stigma was a huge issue for people and a barrier stopping people connecting, stopping people reaching out, and stopping people getting the help and support they needed. And they also saw that the family members and friends and carers also felt that there was this issue with stigma, and that sometimes they couldn't talk about their own experiences or the experiences of their loved ones for fear of being judged. And essentially that's where Sea Change came from. So Sea Change is now 11 years running, and we are the National Stigma Reduction Programme. And what we look at is the idea of reducing the stigma associated with mental ill health and reducing this discrimination that occurs for people who experience mental health difficulties. You can see on the screen there as well also Headline, our sister project, and Headline looks at supporting the media on responsible reporting around suicide and suicide prevention, and also looks at training journalists. So there's an awful lot of information there that you can find out about Headline and the media and how they engage in that, and that's at headline.ie. So we do lots of different things under the umbrella of Shine. So I would really encourage you to look at what those supports are, and a lot of them are available fully funded as well. So do have a look at those resources. It's also great from a workplace to know about the resources available. So if you have people who are struggling with their mental health, or as I say, a family member supporting somebody, they may be able to access the supports of the Shine services. And one of the new things we have this year in relation to our workplaces, we are now going to be offering participants across our workplace programme access to counselling through our Shine services, and that's for the family members. So that's something that's a bonus, I suppose, but it's how we work, and it's how we look at how do we support each other in a bigger way. So who have we worked with before? So you can see on the screen there that there is a range of different organisations. This is only a small glimpse of some of the people that we work with. Some of the ones that we would work with in a greater way, you can see Boots there. So over the last number of years, you may have seen green ribbons in the Boots stores, for example. So while these organisations have been through our workplace programme, we also do partner with a lot of organisations to do different things across the year as well. So I'll talk a little bit more about that at a later point. So to move on then to, okay, so what is it that we do? What is this 6 steps? What is this program? Why do we do it? What are we doing? So the 6-step program was put into place in 2013 and officially launched as a 6-step program in 2015. The reason that we did it was because when we started back in 2013 looking at stigma in the workplace, we did presentations. We went in and we gave these presentations, and we had 2 experiences. One was where we had organisations saying, yes, we've now ticked that mental health box, we've done the job, that's it, we don't have to do any more. And we also had the opposite, where we had organisations say, actually, this is really important. We understand that we need to make bigger change. We need cultural change. We need more long-term change and an investment in this. What do we do? How do we do that? So we developed this 6-step program to look at supporting organisations through that process. So it's not that we have every single step that we support you in it, but we have a guideline to some of the actions you can take, and we would have some supports for each of those steps for you as well. So the first step that we put in place are these line managers and senior leadership workshops. So I'll talk to you a little bit about the workshop in a moment, but just from this point of view, it is a workshop that is based on the understanding of what stigma is. So this topic of mental health, what is it? You know, what is this thing? What does it mean? How does it impact us? And particularly when stigma shows up and it shows up in our workplaces, what is that impact and how can we move past that? How can we create a culture change so that we don't experience stigma towards mental health issues in our workplaces? So that's really what our workshops are about. What we aren't is a support system, I suppose. We also are not, we're not going to go through all the signs and symptoms. We're not going to go through how to recognize, and we're not going to go through how to individually support somebody. Those are the kind of things that you would get from the likes of Mental Health First Aid Ireland, or from some of the other mental health charities that do different wellbeing or different supporters programs. What we look at is the topic of stigma and the topic of mental health and how to engage in that as a very first step. So for example, we would recommend doing some of those programs like Mental Health First Aid, and you can see there on number 4, Empowering Staff Champions. That is a perfect match. So the kind of things that we do is we would recommend different actions to go through this program, but it also leaves it open for each organisation to do what works best for them. So when we look at what these steps are, it's not that you have to do 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. Sometimes you can have an organization that's doing a couple of different ones simultaneously, and you might have the like of this number 2 there. So the number 2 is looking at your implementation and overhaul of policies and procedures. So we recommend that organizations have their own specific mental health policy, not something that falls in under something else. And in relation to that, we have documentation to support you with that, which I'll show you on another slide in a moment. But it's the idea of, if we are going to have more robust supports in place, we need to have those policies and actual procedures in place to support us, and particularly coming from a management perspective, to understand, how do I support somebody on my team? And then if I was the person who needed that support, what would I do? So looking at how do we create those mental health policies and how do we implement them? That's that step. For a lot of organizations, that isn't a quick piece. A lot of organizations as well, depending on the size, may need to get legal advice and different input depending on who is involved in their policy writing and the procedure side of things. So we understand that as part of the process. And so it's not that you have to do this and do it within a month or do it within 6 weeks or 3 months. We work with organizations on different timeframes depending on their capacity. So from that understanding, we look at being as supportive as possible and being very flexible in how organizations complete these steps. So looking at then, you know, what is the bit about the staff training and what's this bit about the champions? So the staff training is really to understand that all staff are starting to get an understanding of the topic of mental health. So for some organizations, that could be training those staff champions and embedding that and having everybody aware that this is going on and how to engage in that. For some organizations, it might be having talks about mental health as a topic. It might be bringing in different speakers. It could be arranging internal coffee mornings, having a chat about it and doing things that way. It can also look at building other programs like resilience training and other things that are supportive to our mental health. So it's not that everything has to be, well, no, today we're going to talk about this particular mental illness. It isn't that. It's about making mental health a normal part of our conversation and a priority, that we don't just do it this once in a year, that we keep it on our agendas all year through, and we make sure that it is embedded into the culture of our organizations. So then when we talk about the champions, quite often those are the people that drive these programs and kind of say, well, look, let's really get involved. So for example, we have a lot of organizations that would have mental health champions, and one of the easiest wins for them is to get engaged in our Green Ribbon campaign. So we deliver over 500,000 ribbons across the country free of charge. And this year we will be doing it in September. And like that, quite often the champion might be the one to reach out to us and say, well, actually, we're now going to do this. We want to run an event. Can you provide a speaker? Or we've gone and got our own speaker. This is how many ribbons we'd like. What other stuff have you got for us to download? I'm going to share it with, you know, our wellbeing team, and we're going to share it out across our staff. those are the kind of things that we can do. And it's about looking at some of the things that we can do that are either free of charge or, cost neutral, that we do a lot of bartering with either our colleagues or with other organizations that we would support. So for example, some of the things that we do in Sea Change, we would work with a lot of other mental health organizations, and we would have a barter system in place where we might provide a workshop that might usually have a charge on it, and swap it for a workshop that they would provide to us. So there's lots of different things that we can do that don't always necessarily involve cost. And then looking at the engaging your network. So that's really about, if you're doing this kind of work, it's about shouting about it. It's about getting it out there. It's about letting people know that you do it. So things that we can do in that kind of way would be like sharing it on your social media, having it on your website, having it in your annual reports, having it as part of your newsletter for clients and those kind of things. And then obviously internally that you're shouting about it to your staff. If you have a physical place where your clients or services coming in and out and those kind of things, you can also put posters up. We have certificates at the end of the course that you can also display. So there's lots of different things in that direction that you can do. So looking at this, we are delighted that we now certify the course, and also that the individual participants get a certificate as well, because it's nice to get something to show what you've got. So on the screen there, you can see that's a screenshot of one of our online workplaces. So like everybody, we merged onto the online platform because of COVID-19, and we are hoping to move back to a hybrid where we will have face-to-face, because in 2019 we were solely face-to-face, and we have a number of different facilitators who are external to us, and they would be contracted to do our workplace program. They have been with us for quite a number of years, and all work in different ways with different mental health organizations as well. So they're very, very knowledgeable in this area. And really, when we're talking about these workshops, it's a facilitated conversation. So it's not a presentation where they stand for a number of hours and speak at your staff. It's a matter of, there's lots of breakout rooms, there's lots of conversations, there's lots of polls. So it's a really engaged piece, and it's about, having that human interaction and really getting people to show up as themselves, and then taking away what they learn and integrating that into their role, rather than showing up and being a manager on the call. Because that's not what we do. And really, when we live our jobs, it can make it that little bit easier to show a little bit of compassion if somebody is struggling. So when we look at this program and we look at how we support, it's really important that we understand the why in the first place. And that's really what Sea Change is about in this instance, when we're looking at why do we need to have conversations about mental health. How will come later, like I say, with the like Mental Health First Aid Ireland training, understanding what that might look like. So for us, it's about breaking down the stigma and making sure that our door is open in the first place, that people feel safe to have that conversation at the very beginning. So I mentioned resources to you. So we have a huge range of resources. From a workplace perspective, we have developed a suite of different documents for you. So you've got on the screen there, you've got the Workplace Action Plan. We are actually running now a Workplace Action Plan workshop. So this helps you go step by step through that action plan, and that crosses the whole 6 steps, and it breaks down what each step looks like, who's going to manage it, what the timeline is, what kind of steps you need to take within each step, and what happens if there is any challenges, how you can move past those, and what other resources are available as well. So we will send information to everybody about that workshop following this one. And anybody who wants to sign up, again, it's free of charge. It will be an hour session. It will be an information session like this, and then you'll get the resources from that thereafter as well. The mental health policy document and the workplace briefing document as well. I have the older versions in front of me. They are an A4 size. For some of them, they are a little bit more substantial, like the mental health policy document. So we would hope that organizations would take these on board and really implement them, but also make it their own. So it's not about picking up this document and using it word for word. It's about making it a living document that is going to be functional for your organization. We also have a case law review on mental health in the workplace. So this is looking at employment and equality legislation on mental health in the workplace. So that guide comes as part of this suite as well. So we have a number of those. We also have a number of smaller documents, and these are available for download, or some of them on our website website, and the rest of them then will be available as part of our website portal. So this is a private area that we have for our workshops. So anybody who signs up from an organizational point of view, and then participants who go to the program, can have access to all of these documents. They're all going to be in one place, and it's private so that you have your own login to get in. So there's a number of different resources there, and I have a list here. So there's a whole pile of different ones. So you can see on the screen there, Change Your Thinking, a manager's guide to supporting your team. We have organizational culture. We have a number of different activities on creating open workplace cultures. You know, how to start a conversation, considering the language that we use. So we've done these as a one-page document so that it's quick information for you to use, and that it's a resource to lean on rather than something big and heavy that is going to take you a good period of time to read. So it's about having those pieces that you can work through. So as I mentioned about the action plan, the resources are there, and that will be available through the action plan workshop that we're going to run, and that will be run by the end of Q1. So if you are interested in that, we would be delighted to support you in attending that, and we would hope that at the end of that workshop you'd have a really strong understanding of what you need to do with your action plan, and you will have actually started it in the workshop as well. So then looking at what does the 6 steps look like? How do we get involved? If I want to do workshops, how is that going to look? So what our process is, we would send out the terms and conditions, and that looks at different pieces that we need in place to support you. So once we get those back, we can then send you out your welcome pack and look at booking dates. So in relation to the booking of the line managers workshops, we look to support organisations with up to 3 fully funded workshops. So our workshops are approximately €950 per workshop. So we look to support you with that and all of the resources that come behind as well. You'd also have one-to-one access with our workplace programme officer. So just to let you all know that currently I'm recruiting, so we will hopefully have that person in place next month. So in the meantime, I'm your go-to, I'll be looking after you. So looking at those line manager workshops, if you decide that you want to do the workplace program in 6 months, we would look at getting those workshops booked in as soon as possible. And we would always recommend as well, if you have somebody who's going to be involved in the action plan, that they would sit in on one of those workshops to understand the process. When we then look at the action plan, as I said, we have a workshop to go through that with you. And it's not that if you put things on the action plan and you don't get them done, you can't be certified. We understand that things change. So it might be a thing that you have, let's say 10 actions on your action plan and you complete 8. And one of them, as you're going through, you realize it's not the right fit for your organization. So you completely scrap it. And the last one, you decide, well, actually, we found something that's a better fit, so we did this instead. That's absolutely fine. And as I mentioned, it doesn't have to be in specific order as well. Once you have everything completed by the end date, we're quite happy to support you in that. And then lastly, about coming back to us, so we look at revisiting that action plan closer to the end date then, before we certify the organisation, and look at what it was that you did, what worked, what maybe didn't work for you. And, you know, we hope to support you through that. And then we have a networking event towards the end of the year where we give out the certification for each organisation, and then you will receive an actual certificate for the organisation completing the 6 steps as well. So I mentioned the Green Ribbon campaign, so I just want to say a little bit more about that. So this year we are in our 10th year, and the whole purpose of the Green Ribbon campaign is to get people talking about mental health. When we look at the workplace and we look at how important it is for us to have conversations at work, the research that we did, which I'm going to go through with you in a moment, really looks at how important it is that we have mental health conversations in work and why. So that impact around people feeling afraid. So for example, you could be putting on loads of workshops, you could be doing lots of mental health talks, and people may not be showing up to them. And what we have found in our research is that that's because they are fearful of being judged, they're fearful of being treated differently, they're fearful of, well, if I go to that mental health thing, people are going to think that I have a mental illness. That's a lot of the perception. So this is why we need to have these conversations and do these different steps to help our teams and our staff and our friends understand that it's safe and it's okay and it's normal to have conversations about mental health. So the Green Ribbon campaign really is about starting that conversation. So as I mentioned earlier, we have 500,000 ribbons that we put out every year. We are more than happy to support organisations, and we send those out free of charge. So whether you want 500 ribbons, 5,000 ribbons, or 15,000 ribbons, we would be delighted to support you. And we will be opening the pre-orders for those around April as well. So again, we will send out information on those. This year, we are going to be focusing on the theme of shame. So last year, we looked at the theme of exclusion, and the previous year, we looked at the theme of discrimination. So across the year, we're going to be talking about this topic. And we have a range of people called ambassadors who have lived experience of mental health difficulties, who share their stories with a view to helping us end mental health stigma and understanding that we all have mental health all of the time, that people can and do recover, and that people who still experience mental health difficulties can still live a very normal life as well. So it's about using those voices in a way that normalizes these mental health conversations. And across the Green Ribbon campaign, we normally see a large uptake of the like of our anti-stigma talks and the personal storytelling as well. But just to let you know, those are not just for the Green Ribbon. So it's a little bit like puppies are not just for Christmas. You know, mental health is not just for Green Ribbon. So when we say that we have these offers available to you, so when I'm talking about an offer, we're talking about a person coming in and sharing their story with your colleagues and maybe some tips that helped them in understanding how to change and how to improve their lives. We do a 1-hour stigma presentation that looks at understanding the theme of stigma and understanding how we break that down, where it shows up and how we can move it. And then we also do panel discussions as well. So if you have a panel and you're looking for a panel member to talk about their own lived experience and to talk about mental health, we also offer those. They are all funded and we can run those anytime across the year. So at this point, I'm now going to introduce you to Shauna. So I'm going to give a wave. Shauna runs our ambassador program, and she does a massive amount of training. So when we talk about our ambassadors, it's important for you to know that these people are trained in how to tell their story responsibly. We also do self-care training with them. We do training like the media training so that they understand how to tell their story in a responsible way that isn't triggering for others. And we would do a lot of things around the purpose of storytelling and how we do that storytelling. So there's a lot that goes into supporting them so that they can help us really change that conversation. And we are very grateful to be funded by the National Office of Suicide Prevention in relation to those. So there is no charge for those particular talks. The Green Ribbon campaign, there is a massive amount of resources that are downloadable and available to you free of charge, aside from the Green Ribbons, and those are available on our website. So for more information, we can send you on those when after this as well. So